She thought the quiet stranger who tipped $20 was just being kind, but Olivia Harper had no idea she was falling for the city's most feared mafia boss. While her cop father lay dying, swearing to bring down the DeLuca crime family with his last breath, she was serving coffee to the very man he'd spent 15 years hunting. When her abusive ex-boyfriend shattered her world with threats and violence, only one person had the power to make him disappear forever, but accepting Matteo DeLuca's protection would mean betraying everything her father stood for. Little did she know that behind those dark eyes and gentle smile lay secrets that would either save her family or destroy them all. What happens when a waitress discovers that sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is also the only one who can keep you safe? Make sure you subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this love story is about to collide with a world where loyalty and betrayal are separated by a heartbeat. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., but Olivia Harper was already awake. She had been staring at the ceiling for the past hour, watching the cracks in the plaster catch the dim streetlight that filtered through her threadbare curtains. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when worry ate at her mind like acid. She slipped out of bed quietly, her bare feet touching the cold linoleum floor. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Chen next door coughing again. The sound made her chest tight. Everyone in this building was fighting something: illness, poverty, loneliness. Olivia tiptoed to the small bedroom where her 7-year-old brother Ethan slept. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his small chest rose and fell peacefully. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel grateful. He was safe. He was here. That was what mattered. She dressed quickly in her diner uniform, a faded pink dress that had seen better days and white sneakers with holes she'd covered with duct tape. The mirror in their tiny bathroom showed a face that looked older than 28. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, and worry lines creased her forehead. But there was no time to feel sorry for herself. "Ethan, sweetie," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. "Time to get up." His eyes opened, the same warm brown as hers, but he didn't speak. He hadn't said a word since the night their mother died 6 months ago. The doctor said it was trauma, that he would talk when he was ready. Olivia hoped that day would come soon. She helped him dress in his school clothes, brushing his hair with tender strokes. "Mrs. Rodriguez will walk you to school today, okay? And she'll pick you up too. I have to work a double shift." Ethan nodded, his small hand reaching for hers. His silence broke her heart every single day, but his trust in her gave her strength to keep going. The walk to work took 15 minutes through streets that seemed grayer each morning. Broken glass glittered on sidewalks and graffiti covered most walls. This neighborhood wasn't where she dreamed of raising Ethan, but it was what they could afford on her waitress wages. Mel's Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Oak, its neon sign flickering with the word "open" in tired red letters. The smell of bacon grease and coffee hit her as she pushed through the door. Home sweet home for the next 12 hours. "Morning, Liv," called Rosa, the day cook. Her weathered face broke into a smile that made the cramped kitchen feel warmer. "Coffee's fresh." "You're an angel," Olivia said, pouring herself a cup in a chipped mug. The bitter liquid helped wash away the taste of fear that seemed to live in her mouth these days. The morning rush started early. Construction workers grabbing breakfast before their shifts, office workers who couldn't afford the fancy coffee shops downtown, regular customers who had become like family over the years. But it was around 10 o'clock when he walked in. Olivia noticed him immediately. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his dark jacket perfectly. His black hair was neat, and his face looked like it had been carved from stone. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He moved with the careful grace of someone who was always aware of his surroundings. What struck her most was how quiet he seemed, Not shy quiet, but watchful quiet, like a predator resting between hunts. He chose a corner booth with his back to the wall and a clear view of the door. Smart choice in this neighborhood. "What can I get you?" Olivia asked, notepad ready. When he looked up at her, she felt something flutter in her chest. His eyes were intense, but not unkind. There was sadness there, buried deep beneath layers of control. "Coffee, black, and whatever pie you recommend." His voice was low, smooth, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Italian, maybe. "The apple pie's good. Rosa makes it fresh every morning." He nodded. "That'll work." As she poured his coffee, she noticed his hands. Clean, strong, but with small scars across his knuckles. Working man's hands, but not from construction or factory work. She'd seen enough of those to know the difference. He left a $20 tip on a $10 check. When she tried to give him change, he was already gone. "Did you see that?" she asked Rosa during her break. "The quiet one in the corner. Hard to miss. Good looking, too." "He tipped $20. Rosa raised an eyebrow. "Maybe he likes you. Or maybe he felt sorry for me." "Honey, men don't tip $20 out of pity. They tip $20 because they want to see you again." The thought made Olivia's cheeks warm, but she pushed it away. She didn't have time for romance. She had Ethan to think about, bills to pay, and a father whose medical treatments were draining what little savings they'd had. The stranger came back the next day. Same booth, same order, same generous tip. This time he stayed longer, reading a newspaper while he ate. Olivia found herself glancing at him between tables, wondering what his story was. On the third day, he was there when she arrived for her shift. "You're early today," she said, filling his coffee cup. "Good pie's worth getting up for." Was that almost a smile? It was hard to tell with the serious set of his mouth. "What's your name?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Matteo." "I'm Olivia, but everyone calls me Liv." This time he definitely smiled, just a little. "Nice to meet you, Liv." The way he said her name made her stomach flip. She hurried back to the kitchen, face burning. "You're blushing," Rosa pointed out with a knowing grin. "I am not." And I'm the Queen of England." That afternoon, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Ethan's fine, but there was a man asking questions about you at the school. Principal sent him away." Ice-cold fear shot through her veins. She called immediately. "What kind of questions?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "About where you work, what your schedule is. The principal said he claimed to be a cousin, but something felt off about him." Olivia knew exactly who it was. Danny Reeves, her ex-boyfriend, had been getting more persistent lately. What had started as phone calls asking for money had escalated to showing up at her apartment. She'd hoped changing the locks would be enough, but apparently not. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of anxiety. Every time the diner door opened, she expected to see Danny's angry face. By closing time, her nerves were stretched thin as wire. She was counting her tips when Matteo approached the counter. "Everything okay? You seem upset." His concern caught her off guard. "Just tired. Long day." He studied her face with those dark eyes. "You sure that's all?" For a moment she wanted to tell him everything, about Danny, about the bills, about how scared she was that she couldn't protect Ethan. But she barely knew this man. "I'm fine, really." Matteo didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. "Be careful walking home. This neighborhood gets rough after dark." As if on cue, the diner door swung open with enough force to rattle the glass. Danny Reeves stood in the doorway, his face flushed with anger and probably alcohol. Olivia's heart sank. "Danny, please. Not here." "Oh, now you'll talk to me?" His voice was loud enough to make Rosa look up from cleaning the grill. "But you won't return my calls?" "There's nothing to talk about. We're done." "Like hell we are." Danny took a step forward, and Olivia instinctively backed away. "You owe me money, Liv, and I'm done being patient." "I don't owe you anything." 3 months' rent while you were playing house with me and your weird little brother. You think that was free?" Olivia's face burned with embarrassment and fury. "You offered to help. I never asked." "Well, I'm asking now. $5,000, or I start making life very difficult for you and the kid." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Olivia's hand shook as she gripped the edge of the counter. That's when Matteo stood up. He didn't say a word at first. He simply rose from his booth and walked toward Danny with slow, measured steps. There was something in his movement, a deadly calm, that made the hair on Olivia's arms stand up. Danny turned, ready to snap at whoever was interrupting, but the words died in his throat when he saw Matteo's face. "I think the lady asked you to leave," Matteo said quietly. His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. Danny, who was a big man himself, suddenly looked small and pale. "This is between me and her." "No." Matteo stepped closer, and Danny actually backed up. "This is between you and the door. I suggest you choose the door." The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Olivia held her breath, terrified that violence was about to erupt in Rosa's peaceful diner. But then Danny's nerve broke. "This isn't over," he muttered, but he was already moving toward the exit. "Yes, it is," Matteo replied, and something in his tone made it sound like a promise. Danny left without another word, the door slamming behind him. Olivia realized she was trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Matteo turned to her, his expression gentle again. The transformation was startling. "Will he be back?" "Probably. He's persistent when he wants something." "What does he want?" "Money I don't have for help I never asked for." Her voice cracked with exhaustion and fear. Matteo was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled a business card from his jacket and placed it on the counter. "If he bothers you again, call me." Olivia looked at the card. It was plain white with just a phone number. No name, no business logo. "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering." She looked up at him, searching his face for some hint of what kind of man would make such an offer to a stranger. All she saw was sincerity and something else, a protective instinct that reminded her of her father before illness had weakened him. "Why would you help me?" Matteo was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Because everyone deserves to feel safe." He left another 20 on the counter and walked out into the night. Olivia stood there holding the business card, wondering if she'd just met her guardian angel or something much more complicated. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every footstep behind her sounded like Danny coming back. She clutched her keys between her fingers like makeshift claws and hurried through the empty streets. Her apartment building looked even more run down in the darkness. The security light was broken again, and half the mailboxes hung open with broken locks. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, listening for any sound that might warn her of danger. Mrs. Rodriguez opened her door as Olivia reached the landing. "There you are. I was worried." "Sorry I'm so late. How was Ethan?" "Perfect, as always. He did his homework and ate all his dinner, but—" "Liv." Her expression grew serious. "That man came by here, too, about an hour ago." Olivia's blood turned to ice. "Danny was here?" "He was asking which apartment was yours. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, but he seemed to figure it out anyway. He stood outside your door for a few minutes before he left. The hallway suddenly felt too small, too dark. Olivia fumbled with her keys, desperate to get inside and make sure Ethan was safe. Her apartment was a tiny two-bedroom with thin walls and thinner carpets, but it was clean, and it was theirs. Ethan was asleep on the couch, curled up under the blanket she'd crocheted for him last winter. Relief flooded through her. She locked the door behind her, sliding the chain into place. Then she checked the windows, making sure they were latched tight. It wasn't much security, but it was all she had. As she got ready for bed, she found herself looking at Matteo's business card again. Just a phone number, but it felt like a lifeline. She tucked it into her wallet next to the picture of her mother holding baby Ethan. Sleep came in fragments, broken by every small sound in the building. Footsteps in the hallway, a door closing somewhere below, the wind rattling her windows. Each noise sent a spike of adrenaline through her system. At 3 a.m., she heard something that made her sit up straight in bed. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, right outside her door. She held her breath, listening. The steps stopped directly in front of her apartment. She could see the shadow of feet blocking the light that came under the door. A soft scratching sound, like someone testing the lock. Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. She reached for her phone, finger hovering over the emergency dial, but before she could press it, the footsteps moved away. Down the hall, down the stairs, gone. She crept to the window and peered through the blinds. A figure was walking away from the building, tall, broad-shouldered. Danny. The message was clear. I know where you live. I can get to you any time I want. Olivia spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor next to Ethan's bed, watching the door and windows. As dawn broke over the city, she made a decision. Maybe it was time to take Matteo up on his offer. But even as she thought it, a part of her wondered what kind of man could make Danny Reeves back down with just a look. And what price might come with accepting help from someone like that. Outside her window, the sun rose on another day in a neighborhood where people minded their own business and trusted no one. It was a place where quiet strangers might be angels or devils, and sometimes the only way to tell the difference was to take a leap of faith. As Ethan stirred awake, rubbing his sleepy eyes, Olivia made her choice. She would keep Matteo's card, but she would try to handle Danny herself first. She had to believe she was strong enough to protect the only family she had left. She just hoped she was right. The next morning brought no peace. Olivia found a folded paper taped to her apartment door when she took Ethan to Mrs. Rodriguez. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. You can't hide forever. Pay up or pay the price. D. The words blurred as tears of frustration filled her eyes. She crumpled the note and shoved it deep into her purse, away from Ethan's curious gaze. Everything okay, mija? Mrs. Rodriguez asked, her weathered face creased with concern. Just junk mail, Olivia lied, forcing a smile. She knelt down to hug Ethan goodbye. His small arms wrapped around her neck, and she breathed in his sweet scent, shampoo and innocence. Be good for Mrs. Rodriguez, okay? Ethan nodded solemnly, his brown eyes watching her face like he could read the worry there. Sometimes she thought he understood more than any 7-year-old should have to. The walk to work felt different today. Every car that slowed down made her pulse race. Every man in a baseball cap made her look twice. Danny was out there somewhere, planning his next move, and she felt like a mouse being stalked by a cat. Matteo was already waiting in his usual booth when she arrived at the diner. The sight of him sent a confusing mix of relief and nervousness through her chest. Morning, she said, pouring his coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. He looked up at her, and she could swear those dark eyes missed nothing. Rough night? Why do you say that? You keep checking the door, and you've got shadows under your eyes. Heat crept up her neck. Was she that obvious? I'm fine. Matteo didn't argue, but he didn't look convinced either. He just nodded and went back to his newspaper, but she noticed his attention kept drifting to the windows, like he was watching for something too. The morning passed without incident, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming. It was like the air before a tornado, too still, too quiet, charged with electricity that made her skin prickle. Around noon, her father called. "Livy, sweetheart, how are you holding up?" Detective Frank Harper's voice was weaker than it used to be, worn down by the cancer that was slowly stealing him away. "I'm okay, Dad. How are you feeling?" "Never mind me. I've been hearing things. Dangerous things." Olivia stepped into the diner's small office for privacy. "What kind of things?" "There's a new player in the city, Mafia family called the DeLucas. Word on the street is they're making moves, taking territory from the old crews. Their boss is young, ruthless. Goes by the name Matteo DeLuca." The coffee mug slipped from Olivia's suddenly numb fingers. It shattered against the floor, sending ceramic pieces skittering across the linoleum. "Livy, you there?" Yes, I'm here. I want you to be extra careful. These people don't play games. If they decide you're in their way, they'll remove you. No questions, no mercy." Olivia stared through the office door at the man sitting in booth 7. Matteo, dark hair, dark eyes, quiet strength that could make grown men back down with a look. Matteo DeLuca, Mafia boss. "Livy?" "I have to go, Dad. I'll call you later." She hung up before he could respond, her mind reeling. The kind stranger who'd protected her from Danny wasn't a guardian angel. He was something much more dangerous. But even as fear crawled up her spine, another part of her whispered, "He helped you." He didn't have to, but he did. She cleaned up the broken mug with shaking hands, trying to process this new reality. When she emerged from the office, Matteo was gone. A $20 bill sat beside his empty coffee cup, as always. The rest of her shift dragged by in a haze of confusion and fear. Every time someone mentioned the news, another gang shooting, another turf war, she thought of those dark eyes and gentle voice asking if she was okay. By closing time, she'd made a decision. She was going to pretend she'd never heard her father's warning. Matteo had been nothing but kind to her, and until he proved otherwise, she would treat him like any other customer. But as she walked home through the gathering dusk, she couldn't ignore the black sedan that seemed to be following her. It stayed half a block behind, matching her pace. When she turned corners, it turned too. When she stopped to look in a store window, it pulled over and waited. By the time she reached her building, her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She fumbled with her keys, casting nervous glances over her shoulder. The sedan's windows were tinted too dark to see inside, but she could feel eyes watching her. Judging. Planning. She made it inside and up the stairs without incident, but as she reached for her apartment door, she froze. It was already open. Just a crack, but enough to send terror shooting through her veins like ice water. She always locked that door. Always. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" she called out, hoping against hope that her neighbor had needed to get inside for some reason. No answer. Olivia pushed the door open slowly, every muscle in her body coiled to run. The living room looked wrong somehow, couch cushions slightly askew, her few books scattered instead of neatly stacked. Small things, but enough to tell her that someone had been here. Someone had gone through her things. "Ethan," she whispered. A small sound came from the kitchen. Olivia grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door and crept forward on silent feet. She found him sitting at their tiny kitchen table, coloring in a book like nothing had happened. But his shoulders were hunched with tension, and his crayon moved in sharp, angry strokes. "Ethan, sweetie, are you okay?" He looked up at her with those solemn brown eyes and nodded, but then he pointed toward her. "Bedroom." A man's voice came from behind her. "Hello, Liv?" She spun around, baseball bat raised, to find Danny leaning against her bedroom doorway. He looked pleased with himself, like a cat who'd caught a particularly fat mouse. "Get out," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Get out right now." "Relax. I just wanted to talk." He gestured around the apartment. "Nice place, real homey. Be a shame if something happened to it." The threat was barely veiled. Olivia glanced at Ethan, who had gone very still in his chair. "What do you want?" "You know what I want. $5,000. And I'm done waiting." "I don't have that kind of money." Danny smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then you better find it, because if you don't, I'm going to make life very unpleasant for you and the kid." He pushed off from the doorway and walked toward her. Olivia raised the bat higher, but Danny just laughed. "You're not going to hit me, Liv. You're too nice. Too soft." He reached out like he was going to touch her face, and she jerked away. "That's always been your problem." The sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. Someone was coming up the stairs, and they weren't trying to be quiet about it. Danny's cocky expression flickered. "Expecting company?" Before Olivia could answer, her apartment door swung open with enough force to bang against the wall. 3 men walked in like they owned the place, and Olivia's blood turned to ice water. The first was Matteo, but this wasn't the quiet customer from the diner. This man moved with predatory grace, his dark eyes scanning the room and cataloging every detail. Behind him came 2 other men, both big, both dangerous-looking, both watching Danny like wolves eyeing a wounded deer. "Leave." Matteo's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made the hair on her arms stand up. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Matteo's gaze shifted to Danny, who had gone pale as paper. "And you are?" "Nobody," Danny stammered. "I was just leaving." "No, you weren't." Matteo stepped further into the apartment, and somehow the room felt smaller. "You were threatening a woman and a child in their own home." "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you broke into this apartment and terrorized an innocent family." Matteo's voice never rose above conversational level, but Danny was sweating now. "It looks like you're exactly the kind of scum that gives this neighborhood a bad reputation." One of Matteo's men, a tall, lean guy with cold eyes, moved to block the doorway. The other positioned himself near the windows. Danny was trapped, and he knew it. "Look, this is between me and her." "No." Matteo took another step forward, and Danny actually whimpered. "This is between you and me now. And I don't like people who hurt women and children." Olivia watched this exchange with growing amazement. Danny, who had seemed so threatening moments ago, was falling apart under Matteo's calm stare. "I want you to apologize to the lady," Matteo continued, "and then I want you to promise me that you'll never come near her or her brother again." "I'm sorry," Danny said quickly, the words tumbling over each other. "I'm sorry, Liv. I won't bother you anymore. I swear." "Good." Matteo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because if you do, my friends and I will have another conversation, and next time I won't be nearly as polite." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Danny nodded frantically and made a move toward the door, but Matteo stopped him with a raised hand. "One more thing. The money you think she owes you? Consider the debt forgiven, permanently." Danny opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but one look at Matteo's face changed his mind. Yeah, okay, forgotten. Luca, Matteo said without turning around. Please escort Mr. Reeves, Danny supplied miserably. Please escort Mr. Reeves out of the building and make sure he understands that this neighborhood is no longer safe for him. The lean man, Luca, smiled like a shark. My pleasure, boss. They left together, Danny stumbling and Luca following like a shadow. The other man remained by the window, watching the street below. Suddenly, the apartment felt too quiet. Olivia realized she was still holding the baseball bat and set it down with trembling hands. Thank you, she whispered. Matteo turned to her, and she saw the exact moment he transformed back into the gentle stranger from the diner. His shoulders relaxed, his expression softened, and when he spoke, his voice was kind again. Are you really okay? Did he hurt you? She shook her head, but tears were threatening now that the immediate danger was over. How did you know to come? I had someone watching the building when they saw him go inside. He shrugged. I don't like people who prey on the innocent. Olivia looked over at Ethan, who was still sitting frozen at the kitchen table. This was too much for a 7-year-old to process. How was she supposed to explain any of this? But then Matteo did something that shocked her. He walked over to the kitchen table and knelt down beside Ethan's chair. Hey there, he said softly. You must be Ethan. Ethan stared at him with wide eyes but didn't respond. He hadn't spoken to anyone except Olivia since their mother died. I'm Matteo. I'm a friend of your sister's. He glanced at the coloring book spread out on the table. That's really good work. Is that a dinosaur? Ethan nodded slowly. I like dinosaurs. Did you know some of them were as big as school buses? Despite everything that had just happened, Ethan's eyes lit up with interest. He pointed to another drawing, a smaller dinosaur with sharp teeth. Velociraptor, Matteo said with a smile. Good choice. They were pack hunters, like wolves. Very smart. For the first time in months, Olivia saw her little brother almost smile. The sight made her chest tight with emotion. Matteo stood up and turned back to her. Pack some bags. You're not safe here anymore. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? We can't just leave. This is our home. This is 4 walls and a broken lock. Home is where you're safe, where you're protected. His dark eyes were serious. I can give you that. I don't even know you. You know enough. He gestured toward the door where Danny had fled. You know I keep my word. You know I don't tolerate people who hurt children. And you know that if you stay here, he'll be back with friends. Olivia wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Danny wouldn't give up this easily, and next time, he might bring backup. Next time, a baseball bat wouldn't be enough to protect Ethan. Where would we go? Somewhere safe, somewhere with real security, where you can sleep at night without listening for footsteps in the hallway. It sounded like paradise. It also sounded too good to be true. What's the catch? Matteo was quiet for a long moment. The catch is that you'll have to trust me, and I know that's not easy. Olivia looked around her tiny apartment, the broken lock, the thin walls, the windows that faced an alley where anything could happen. Then she looked at Ethan, still clutching his crayon like a lifeline. Her father's warning echoed in her mind. These people don't play games. If they decide you're in their way, they'll remove you. But another voice whispered back, he protected you. He made Danny go away. He was kind to Ethan. If I say yes, she said slowly, what exactly am I agreeing to? Safety, protection, a place to stay until we can figure out a more permanent solution. And what do you get out of it? Matteo's expression grew distant, like he was looking at something she couldn't see. Maybe a chance to do something right for once. There was pain in his voice, old and deep. Whatever had happened to him, whatever had made him into the kind of man who could terrify Danny Reeves with a look, it still hurt him. Olivia thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, who would worry. About her job at the diner, which barely paid the bills but was all she had. About her father dying in a hospital bed while she made decisions that would have horrified the cop he used to be. But mostly she thought about Ethan, small and silent, and trusting her to keep him safe. "Okay," she said quietly, "but just for tonight, until we can figure something else out." Matteo nodded. Just for tonight. But even as she said it, Olivia suspected that nothing would ever be that simple again. The drive to Matteo's estate took them through parts of the city Olivia had never seen. They left behind the broken streetlights and boarded windows of her neighborhood, climbing into hills where houses sat behind tall gates and perfect lawns. Ethan pressed his face to the window of Matteo's black SUV, watching the world change outside. Olivia held their hastily packed duffel bag on her lap, still not quite believing this was really happening. "Second thoughts?" Matteo asked from the driver's seat, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "About 100 of them." He almost smiled. "That's probably smart." The SUV's headlights swept across iron gates that opened without them stopping. Motion sensors, Olivia realized. They drove up a long, winding driveway, lined with old oak trees that cast strange shadows in the moonlight. The house that emerged from the darkness took her breath away. It was massive, 3 stories of stone and glass that spoke of old money and older power. Warm light glowed from tall windows, making it look almost welcoming. Almost. "This is where you live?" she whispered. "It's where I stay," Matteo corrected, parking near a fountain that probably cost more than she made in 5 years. The distinction felt important, though she couldn't say why. A man appeared at the front door as they got out, tall and lean with sharp features and watchful eyes. Luca, who had escorted Danny away from her apartment with such quiet menace. "Everything secure?" Matteo asked. "Perimeter's clear. Romano's men are positioned at all access points." Luca's gaze shifted to Olivia and Ethan. "The rooms are ready." Rooms, plural. Olivia felt a flutter of relief. Whatever this arrangement was, she wouldn't be sharing a bed with a man she barely knew. The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. Everything was beautiful and expensive and somehow cold, like a hotel where no one actually lived. "Are you hungry?" Matteo asked, leading them through a living room the size of her entire apartment. Ethan nodded shyly. He hadn't eaten dinner in all the chaos. Rosa left sandwiches in the kitchen. "Rosa?" Olivia's heart skipped. "From the diner?" Matteo paused, looking uncomfortable. "Different Rosa. She works for me." Another reminder that she was stepping into a world she knew nothing about. How many Rosas were there in Matteo DeLuca's life? How many people who worked for him in ways she probably didn't want to think about? The kitchen was bigger than most restaurants, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. An older woman with kind eyes and graying hair bustled around, setting out plates and glasses of milk. "You must be Olivia," she said warmly. "I'm Rosa Benedetto, and this handsome young man must be Ethan." Ethan hung back behind Olivia's legs, overwhelmed by all the newness. But when Rosa offered him a cookie shaped like a dinosaur, he stepped forward cautiously. "I have a grandson about your age," Rosa told him. "He loves dinosaurs too. Maybe you can meet him sometime." Watching Ethan tentatively accept the cookie, Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time a stranger had been genuinely kind to him? When was the last time he'd been offered a cookie just because he was a child who deserved sweetness in his life? "The blue room is ready for Ethan," Rosa continued, addressing Olivia. "It has bunk beds and lots of books. The rose room is for you. It has a nice view of the garden." Separate rooms in a house full of security. It should have made Olivia feel safer. Instead, she felt more lost than ever. After Ethan had eaten his sandwich and most of the dinosaur cookie, Rosa led them upstairs. The blue room was perfect for a little boy. Soft lighting, shelves full of books and toys, and yes, bunk beds with a ladder that made Ethan's eyes light up for the first time all day. "Can I sleep on the top?" he asked Olivia in a whisper. Her heart nearly stopped. Those were the first words he'd spoken to her since their mother's funeral. "Of course, sweetie." She helped him climb up, tucking the soft blue blankets around him. Sweet dreams. He was asleep almost instantly, exhausted by the day's trauma and excitement. Olivia's room was down the hall, all cream walls and rose-colored curtains, with a bed so big she could have gotten lost in it. French doors led to a balcony overlooking gardens that probably bloomed with flowers she couldn't afford to buy at the grocery store. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding her phone and staring at the contact for her father. She should call him, tell him where she was. But how could she explain that she'd brought Ethan to stay in the home of the very man her father considered the city's most dangerous criminal? A soft knock on the door made her look up. Matteo stood in the doorway, having changed from his expensive suit into jeans and a simple black sweater. He looked younger somehow, less intimidating, more like the quiet customer from the diner. "Everything okay? Do you need anything?" "I should call my dad. Let him know we're safe." Matteo's expression grew careful. "What will you tell him?" The question hung between them. What would she tell him? The truth? Lies? Something in between? "I don't know," she admitted. Matteo stepped into the room but stayed near the door, like he was giving her space to run if she needed to. "Your father is Detective Frank Harper. Terminal cancer, been on medical leave for 6 months. Before that, he spent 15 years working organized crime cases." The casual way he rattled off facts about her family should have terrified her. Instead, she felt oddly relieved that he wasn't pretending anymore. "So you know. I know he's a good cop who spent his career trying to put people like me behind bars. Are you? Like them, I mean." Matteo was quiet for a long time, studying her face. "I'm not sure there's a simple answer to that question." It wasn't a denial, but it wasn't a confession either. Olivia thought about the way Danny had crumbled under his stare, the casual efficiency with which his men had appeared at her apartment, the house full of security and secrets. "Will you hurt us?" "No." The answer was immediate and certain. "I will never hurt you or Ethan. I give you my word." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I could have hurt you already, if that's what I wanted. Because I brought you here instead of leaving you to deal with Danny on your own. Because—" He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "Because some things are more important than business." There was something in his voice, a vulnerability he was trying to hide. It made her want to ask more questions, to understand what had happened to make him build walls so high around himself. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed with a text message. "Heard there was trouble at your building tonight. Are you and Ethan safe? Dad." Olivia stared at the screen, her heart sinking. How did he know? Did he still have contacts watching her neighborhood? "He knows," she said quietly. Matteo moved closer, close enough to read the message over her shoulder. She could smell his cologne. something expensive and understated that made her think of safety and danger all at once. "What will you tell him?" She typed back, "We're fine. Staying somewhere safe tonight." It wasn't exactly a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Her father's response came immediately. "Where? I can send a patrol car." Olivia looked up at Matteo, who was watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "He'll keep digging until he finds out," she said. "I know." "Will that be a problem? For you, I mean?" Matteo's smile was tired and sad. "Everything's a problem in my line of work, but some problems are worth having." The way he said it made her chest flutter with something she didn't want to name. This man was dangerous. She knew that now, without any doubt. But he was also the person who had knelt down to talk to Ethan about dinosaurs, who had made sure they had separate rooms and homemade cookies and a safe place to sleep. Her phone buzzed again. "Liv, where are you? I need to know you're somewhere I can reach you." This time, Olivia made a decision that surprised even her. "I'll tell him in the morning," she said, turning the phone face down. "Tonight, I just want Ethan to sleep somewhere. He doesn't have to be afraid." Matteo nodded, understanding passing between them without words. "Rosa made hot chocolate," he said, "if you're interested." Olivia realized she hadn't eaten since her break at the diner. The idea of hot chocolate, of something warm and sweet and normal, sounded like exactly what she needed. "That sounds nice." They found Rosa in the kitchen, cleaning up the dinner dishes. She smiled when she saw them. "Perfect timing. I just finished making my famous hot chocolate. Secret ingredient is cinnamon." She poured 2 steaming mugs and discreetly disappeared, leaving Olivia and Matteo alone at the kitchen island. The hot chocolate was perfect, rich and sweet, and warming her from the inside out. "This house is beautiful," Olivia said, looking around at the expensive appliances and perfect tile work. "But it feels empty," Matteo finished. "I know." "Do you live here alone?" "Mostly. Rosa comes during the day. Security is here around the clock, but they stay outside unless there's trouble." "That sounds lonely." Matteo's hands tightened around his mug. "It's safer that way." Safer for who? He was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I had a family once, a wife and daughter. This house, I built it for them." Past tense. Olivia's heart clenched with sudden understanding. "What happened?" "My enemies used them to get to me, took them while I was away on business." His voice was steady, but she could see the pain carved deep in the lines around his eyes. "By the time I found them, it was too late." The hot chocolate turned to ash in her mouth. "I'm so sorry." After that, I decided it was better to be alone. Fewer people to lose. Fewer ways for my choices to hurt innocent people. But he'd brought her and Ethan here anyway. Despite the risk, despite his own rules about staying isolated, he'd opened his home to them. "How old was she, your daughter?" 7, same age as Ethan. Understanding hit her like a physical blow. That's why he'd been so gentle with her brother. Why he'd knelt down to talk about dinosaurs. Ethan reminded him of the little girl he'd lost. "Matteo, you should get some sleep," he said, standing up abruptly. "Tomorrow we'll figure out a more permanent solution. Maybe a safe house somewhere outside the city." He was running again, pulling back behind those walls he'd built around his heart. But Olivia had seen the man underneath, the one who still grieved for a family that should have been safe in this beautiful, empty house. "Thank you," she said as he reached the kitchen doorway. "For everything." He paused without turning around. "Don't thank me yet. You might change your mind when you realize what being under my protection really means." After he left, Olivia sat alone in the pristine kitchen, thinking about loss and loneliness and the strange twists that had brought her to this moment. Somewhere upstairs, Ethan was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. Somewhere else in the house, Matteo was probably staring at the ceiling, remembering a wife and daughter who would never come home. And somewhere out in the city, Danny Reeves was probably planning his revenge, not knowing that he'd stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than one waitress with a mute brother. As she climbed the stairs to her temporary room, Olivia wondered if safety always came with such a high price, and whether a man who'd lost everything once could ever risk caring about anyone again. The Rose Room was quiet and comfortable, but sleep was a long time coming. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made her heart race. But gradually, the steady presence of security outside and the solid walls around her began to work their magic. For the first time in months, Olivia Harper fell asleep without listening for footsteps in the hallway. And in the room down the hall, her little brother dreamed of dinosaurs and bunk beds and cookies shaped like kindness. Neither of them heard the footsteps that paced the floors below, a man walking through empty rooms, remembering what it felt like to have a family to protect and wondering if he was strong enough to do it right this time. Morning came, with sunlight streaming through the French doors and the smell of bacon drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, Olivia forgot where she was. Then she saw the rose-colored curtains and remembered everything. Danny's threats, Matteo's rescue, the confession about his lost family. She found Ethan in the kitchen, sitting at the massive island with a plate of pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. His legs swung from the tall stool, and he was actually humming, a sound she hadn't heard since their mother died. "Good morning, sweetie." He looked up with syrup on his chin and smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 6 months. "Rosa made dinosaur pancakes," he whispered, like it was a wonderful secret. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "I can see that." Rosa bustled over with a plate for Olivia, eggs, bacon, toast, cut into perfect triangles. More food than she usually ate in a day. "Mr. DeLuca had to leave early for business," Rosa explained, "but he said to tell you that you're welcome to stay as long as you need." Business. Olivia wondered what kind of business a Mafia boss conducted at 8 in the morning. Then she decided she didn't really want to know. Her phone had 17 missed calls from her father. "I need to make a call," she told Rosa, stepping onto the patio where Ethan couldn't hear. Her father answered before the first ring finished. "Olivia Marie Harper, where the hell are you?" She winced. Full name meant serious trouble. "Dad, I can explain. I sent a patrol car to your building last night. Your neighbor said you left with 3 men in expensive suits. Do you have any idea how that sounded to me? We're safe, Dad, I promise." "Safe where? With who?" His voice was getting that rasping quality that meant he was working himself up. "The doctors said stress was bad for his condition." Olivia closed her eyes and took a breath. "We're staying with someone who can protect us from Danny. Someone who has the resources to keep us safe." "Resources?" The way he said it made the word sound dirty. "Liv, please tell me you didn't get involved with criminals. Please tell me you're smarter than that." Through the patio doors, she could see Ethan laughing at something Rosa was showing him. A photo, maybe of her grandson. He looked happy. Actually happy for the first time since their world fell apart. "Danny broke into our apartment, Dad. He threatened Ethan. The police weren't going to do anything about it. You know they don't care what happens in our neighborhood." "So you turned to vigilantes instead?" "I turned to someone who could actually help." The silence stretched between them. When her father spoke again, his voice was tired. "Livy, sweetheart, I know things have been hard since your mother died. I know you've been carrying too much, trying to take care of everyone. But there are people in this city who will use that against you. People who prey on decent folks who are desperate and scared. What if they're not all like that? What if some of them are just people? Another long pause. Where are you, Liv? She could lie. She could make up a story about a friend's house or a cheap motel. But lies had a way of growing into bigger lies, and she was tired of being afraid all the time. I'm at Matteo DeLuca's house. The explosion of profanity that followed made her hold the phone away from her ear. When it quieted down, her father's voice was deadly calm. You brought my grandson to that monster's house. He's not a monster, Dad. He's the head of a crime family, Olivia. He's responsible for half the violence in this city. He saved us. When Danny was threatening Ethan, Matteo made him go away. He gave us a safe place to sleep and food to eat, and he asked for nothing in return. Men like DeLuca never ask for nothing in return. They just wait until you're too deep to say no to whatever they really want. The patio door slid open behind her. Matteo stepped out, still wearing yesterday's clothes like he hadn't slept. His dark eyes found hers immediately, reading the tension in her posture. I have to go, Dad. Liv, don't hang up on me. We need to... She ended the call and turned to face Matteo. He looked tired, older somehow than he had the night before. Your father? She nodded, unable to trust her voice. What did you tell him? The truth, that we're here, that you're protecting us. She paused. He thinks you're a monster. Something flickered across Matteo's face. Pain, maybe, or resignation. He's not wrong. Yes, he is. The words came out fiercer than she'd intended. A monster wouldn't have made sure Ethan had dinosaur pancakes this morning. A monster wouldn't have given us separate rooms or worried about whether we felt safe. Matteo stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. You don't know what I've done, Liv, what I'm capable of. I know what you did for us. That's enough. They stood there in the morning sunlight, and Olivia felt something shift between them. An understanding, maybe. Or just the recognition that sometimes people were more complicated than the labels the world put on them. I need to ask you something, Matteo said quietly, and I need you to be honest with me. Her heart started beating faster. Okay. Do you want to leave? I can arrange protection for you somewhere else, somewhere far from me and the complications that come with my name. You could start over, you and Ethan. Clean slate. The offer was generous. More than generous, it was exactly what any sane person would want. But as Olivia looked through the patio doors at her brother, still chattering excitedly, to Rosa about dinosaurs, she realized something that surprised her. I don't want to run anymore. Liv, I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of looking over my shoulder every time we leave the apartment. Tired of working 2 jobs just to afford a place where the locks don't work and the heat goes out every winter. She took a breath. You asked me to trust you. Well, I'm asking you to trust me, too. It's not that simple. Why not? Matteo ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as his tell when he was struggling with something. Because men like your father are right about men like me. Because people close to me end up hurt. Because... He looked away, jaw tight with emotion. Because I can't lose anyone else. And there it was. The real reason he'd built walls around himself, why he lived alone in a house meant for a family. Not just to protect others from his dangerous world, but to protect himself from the pain of caring about people he might lose. You won't lose us, she said softly. You can't promise that? No, I can't. but I can promise that hiding from life isn't the same as living it." Before he could respond, the sound of cars in the driveway made them both turn. Through the trees, Olivia could see vehicles approaching, not the sleek sedans of Matteo's men, but ordinary police cars with flashing lights. Matteo's whole demeanor changed, shifting into the controlled alertness she'd seen the night before. "Stay here. Don't let Ethan see whatever's about to happen." But it was too late. Her father was already getting out of the lead car, his face set in grim determination, despite the cane he leaned on heavily. Behind him came two other detectives and what looked like half the patrol division. "Shit," Matteo muttered. Then louder, "Luca!" His second-in-command appeared at the patio door as if he'd been waiting for the call. "Boss?" "Tell the men to stand down. Nobody draws unless the cops do first. This is family business." Luca nodded and disappeared back into the house, speaking quickly into a radio. Frank Harper made it halfway up the front walk before Matteo met him, hands visible and movements careful. Olivia watched from the patio, her heart pounding as the two men faced each other. Her father, who'd spent his career hunting men like Matteo, and the man who'd given her family sanctuary when they had nowhere else to turn. "Detective Harper?" Matteo's voice carried across the lawn, respectful but not subservient. "DeLuca." Her father's voice was rough with illness and anger. "I've come for my family." "They're not prisoners here. They can leave any time they want." "With your permission, you mean?" Matteo's jaw tightened. "With their permission. Ask them yourself." Frank looked past Matteo to where Olivia stood on the patio. Even from a distance, she could see the pain in his eyes, the fear of a dying man who thought he was losing his children to forces he couldn't control. She walked down to meet them, leaving Ethan safely inside with Rosa. "Dad." "Livy?" His voice cracked a little. "Come home, please. We'll figure something else out. This is safe, Dad. Safer than that apartment ever was." "Safe?" He gestured at the house, the security, the carefully positioned men pretending not to be armed. "You call this safe?" "Yes." She looked at Matteo, then back at her father. "I call it home." The words surprised everyone, including her. But as soon as she said them, she knew they were true. In less than 24 hours, this place had become more of a home than anywhere she'd lived since her mother died. "Liv," Matteo said quietly, "you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." She stepped between the two men, looking at each of them in turn. "Dad, I love you. But I can't keep living in fear, jumping at every shadow, wondering if today's the day someone hurts Ethan to get to me. And Matteo, I can't keep pretending that what's happening between us isn't real." Frank's face went pale. "Between you? Leave, please tell me you're not—" "I'm not anything yet. But I could be. If he'll let me." She turned to face Matteo fully, ignoring the police cars and the watching men and her father's horrified expression. "You said you can't lose anyone else. Well, maybe it's time to stop trying so hard to keep everyone away. Maybe it's time to trust that some people are strong enough to handle your world and stubborn enough to stick around anyway." Matteo stared at her like he'd never seen her before. The silence stretched until Frank cleared his throat. "I suppose I don't get a say in this." Olivia took his hand, feeling how thin it had gotten, how the illness was eating him away day by day. "You raised me to be strong, Dad, to stand up for what I believe in, to protect the people I love." She squeezed his fingers gently. "That's exactly what I'm doing." Frank looked at Matteo for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but resigned. "If you hurt them, either of them, I will find a way to destroy you. Dying man or not, I will make it my last act on this earth to see you pay. If I hurt them," Matteo replied quietly. "I'll deserve whatever you do to me." It wasn't exactly a peace treaty, but it was something. Frank nodded curtly and turned back to Olivia. "You call me every day, and if you change your mind about any of this, you call me and I'll come get you. No questions asked. I promise, Dad." He kissed her forehead, the way he had when she was little and the world seemed full of possibilities instead of dangers. "I love you, Livy. Even when I don't understand your choices. I love you too." After the police cars had pulled away, Olivia found herself alone with Matteo in his vast, empty house. Ethan was napping upstairs, worn out by the morning's excitement, and Rosa had gone home to her own family. "Are you sure about this?" Matteo asked. They were sitting in his living room, the afternoon sun slanting through tall windows. "Are you?" He was quiet, for a long time, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. "I told myself I wouldn't let this happen, that I'd help you and Ethan get safe, and then I'd disappear from your lives." "What changed your mind?" "You did. The way you stood up to your father, the way you're not afraid of who I am or what I've done, the way Ethan smiled this morning when Rosa made him pancakes." He paused. "I haven't heard a child laugh in this house since his daughter died." Olivia understood. "We don't have to figure everything out today," she said gently. "We can just take it one day at a time. See what happens." Matteo nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. One day at a time. That evening, they had dinner together in the big kitchen, the three of them around the island like a family. Ethan chattered about his books and his new room and whether they could get a dog. Matteo listened with the focused attention of someone who'd forgotten what it was like to care about everyday things. After Ethan went to bed, Olivia and Matteo sat on the patio under the stars, not talking much, but not feeling the need to fill the silence either. It was peaceful in a way Olivia had forgotten was possible. "Thank you," she said finally. "For what?" "For giving us a chance, for letting us in, for making Ethan smile again." Matteo reached over and took her hand. His fingers were warm and strong and steady. "Thank you for staying, for not running when you found out who I really am." "This is who you really are," she said, squeezing his hand. "The man who reads dinosaur books to a scared little boy. The man who makes sure everyone feels safe before he worries about himself. Everything else is just job requirements." He laughed quietly, and the sound sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I never thought of it that way. Maybe it's time you started?" 6 months later, Olivia woke up in the Rose room to the sound of laughter drifting up from the kitchen. She padded downstairs in her robe to find Matteo and Ethan making pancakes together, both of them covered in flour and grinning like conspirators. "Morning, sleepyhead," Matteo said, dropping a kiss on her forehead. It still sent little shivers down her spine, the casual affection of it. "Did you two make a mess of my kitchen?" "It's not that bad," Ethan protested, his voice clear and strong now. He'd started talking again a month after they moved in, tentative words becoming full sentences, becoming the happy chatter of a little boy who felt safe in the world again. Olivia looked around at the flour-dusted counters and grinned. "Rosa's going to have words with both of you." "Rosa loves us," Matteo said confidently. "We can get away with anything." It was true. The older woman had taken to Ethan like he was her own grandchild, and she treated Olivia like the daughter she'd never had. The house felt full now, alive in a way it hadn't been since tragedy had emptied it years ago. Her father visited every Sunday, his health slowly declining, but his acceptance of Matteo slowly growing. He still didn't approve, exactly, but he could see that Olivia was happy, that Ethan was thriving, that whatever else Matteo DeLuca might be, he was a man who kept his promises about protecting the people he loved. And he did love them. He'd said it for the first time 2 months ago, sitting in this same kitchen while Ethan drew pictures at the table. Simple words that had taken him so much courage to say, "I love you both." Olivia had cried, and Ethan had climbed into Matteo's lap for a hug. And they'd become a family in that moment, messy and complicated and absolutely real. "Liv?" Matteo's voice brought her back to the present. "Sorry, just thinking." "About what?" She looked at him, flower in his dark hair, happiness in his eyes, Ethan's drawing of the three of them, plus a dog stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, and smiled. "About how sometimes the scariest thing you can do is trust someone enough to let them love you. And how sometimes it's worth the risk." Matteo set down his spatula and pulled her close, right there in their flower-covered kitchen with dinosaur pancakes burning on the griddle and their son giggling at the table. "Always worth the risk," he murmured against her hair. Later, after they'd eaten breakfast and cleaned up the kitchen and taken Ethan to the park, Matteo surprised her with a small velvet box. "I know we haven't talked about this," he said, suddenly nervous in a way that reminded her of the quiet customer from the diner. "And I know your father will probably want to arrest me for not asking his permission first, but I can't imagine my life without you and Ethan in it." The ring was perfect, simple, elegant, exactly what she would have chosen if she'd been shopping for herself, which, knowing Matteo, he'd probably figured out somehow. "Is that a proposal?" she asked, her heart pounding. "It's a promise," he said, "that I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret trusting me, that I'll protect you and Ethan and any other children we might have, that I'll love you even when you're mad at me for getting flour all over the kitchen." Olivia laughed through her tears. "That's a lot of promises." "I'm good at keeping promises." She looked at the ring, sparkling in the afternoon sunlight, and thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The fear, the uncertainty, the leap of faith that had changed everything. "Yes," she said. "Yes to which promise? Yes to all of them. Yes to forever. Yes to being a family." When Matteo slipped the ring onto her finger, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. They'd all been broken when they found each other. Her and Ethan by loss and fear, Matteo by grief and guilt. But somehow, together, they'd become whole. That night, after Ethan was asleep and they were sitting on their patio under the stars, Olivia thought about the conversation that had started it all. "Do you remember what you told me that first night about how everyone deserves to feel safe?" Matteo's arm tightened around her. "I think you were only half right." "Oh?" "Everyone deserves to feel safe, but they also deserve to feel loved, to belong somewhere, to have a home that's more than just four walls and a lock on the door." Matteo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft with emotion. "Thank you for teaching me that, for showing me that home isn't a place, it's the people you can't imagine living without." Olivia smiled and settled closer against his side, her engagement ring catching the moonlight. "Thank you for giving us a place where we can just be happy." And they were happy. Not perfect, no family ever was, but happy in the way that mattered. Safe in each other's love, strong enough to face whatever challenges might come, and grateful every day for the chance to build something beautiful out of the broken pieces of their separate pasts. In the house that had once echoed with loneliness, laughter rang out every morning. Ethan's voice filled the halls with questions and stories and the boundless chatter of a child who knew he was loved. Rosa hummed while she cooked, and Matteo smiled more in a day than he had in years. And Olivia, who had spent so long being afraid, finally understood what it meant to be truly home.